Funding for this program is provided by Bertolli, bringing you olive oil since 1865. Born in Tuscany and used by generations. Bertolli. And by Sorrento Cheese Company. For over half a century, Sorrento Cheese Company has followed the secrets of its old world recipe to produce ricotta, mozzarella, provolone, and other traditional Italian cheese. Sorrento cheese, the authentic taste of Italian tradition.
There's one word that comes to my mind to describe the Italian people: passion.
We really feel things. So I think that whatever Italian people do, it always reflects that passion.
Passion is an ingredient that you cannot buy, and I think it's what we should pass along to our sons and daughters.
The world has always found so much to admire in the Italians. Our people, our culture, our lust for life. And if the world thinks we're so wonderful, who are we to object?
Talent for life is to take from the world the best, without being down, being always positive. That is something that you are generally born like that.
Italians have a real passion, a lust for living that I think escapes a lot of Americans, unfortunately. And just by meeting Italians, I realized that they lived just to live, and to enjoy things, food and music and relationship and each other's company.
Italians enjoy life a lot more. Italians from Italy who live there than we do here. They live every day, one day at a time. They're not concerned about tomorrow. That's really the way to live.
It's the appreciation of life, an appreciation of beauty, It's like listening to that bird. Isn't that beautiful?
I'm not Italian, but I'm married to an Italian, and actually, I'm Austro-Hungarian, and my family accuses me to be more Italian than Austro-Hungarian. And I don't think there's another country that geographically is so beautiful as Italy and so varied. And I think living for centuries in this beautiful surrounding, perhaps your aesthetic sense has developed much more than other countries.
We go to Italy because we love Italy, and because we are Italian Americans. And we have always felt when we get there that the whole country is a museum. That you go to these little villages where my parents come from in the south of Italy, and the most beautiful architecture, and the churches have the most beautiful paintings, and every corner that you look at is beautiful.
And of course, just the very fact of the architecture in many of the cities. A city like Venice, for example. I think there's probably no more romantic place on earth. The Grand Canal and seeing Venice for the first time would make even the most heartless soul weep.
With such incredible beauty all around us, it's the most natural thing in the world to reproduce it in everything we create.
We have been growing up since we were a kid with wonderful paintings, if not in our homes anymore, but in the museums, with the beautiful music, with the opera, with the most incredible food, the most genuine olive oil. And I think is this, that is part of us.
Whether in Italy or the United States, we always bring that special Italian flair to everything we do.
My grandfather would see beauty in anything. He would collect stones from the beach, which he found attractive, and he would come home and with some cement and mortar, he would make beautiful figures for the lawn with nothing, with just cement and stones from a beach, but he could make it beautiful.
My aunts would get together in the living room, knit, 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 talk, have coffee, knit, 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 knit. Thousands of baby bonnets, sweaters, scarves, endless, endless supply, but beautifully done.
Well, I am half Italian, and that half has a great passion for life. As a matter of fact, my great aunt had an enormous yard next to our home, and she would grow things, corn, tomatoes, all kinds of vegetables, and just had a knack for doing it.
Everything was art, from designing a home to a garden, the way you put the plants in. We just, everything is art.
I'm just going to clean this up a little bit before I tune it up. I don't know why it is, but the Italian people seem very skilled with their hands, very good with their ideas and vision. But I think it comes from a passion. Yeah, that's not bad.
My Uncle Tony was a self-taught musician. In the basement of his house, he would repair bases, other people's bases. He taught himself to bend wood, you know, he just figured things out. And somebody said to him, Tony, how do you know how to do all these things? And he would say, well, you know Da Vinci?
My father was a master cabinet maker. He had a shop in the house, and he showed us how to do things. He showed me how to cut glass. He showed me how to miter. He showed me how to use his tools. It was very important for them that we should know how to make beautiful things.
My father was a stonemason for 35 years, and during the summers through high school and college, I would go to work with him, and I would see how hard he would work at his job, and the detailing that he would put into it, finishing the cement, and just the pride that he had in putting into his work. And I think for me, I think that's where I get my work ethic from, and why I work so hard at trying to be a perfectionist is because I watched him for many years as he watched my grandfather, and he learned it from him. So I think it's passed down from generation to generation.
We've always had a deep sense of pride in the things we made, and we wanted to be sure the world knew who made it.
Italians love to put their names on things. It, I think, goes back to really to the period at the end of the Middle Ages. Italians were standing out from this anonymous artisan world and saying, I am an artista, I am signing my name.
Come on, Mom, help me up, let's go. What now? Hey, I'll give you my pen, how about that? Is that all right? Here's a pen, come on, let's go. There you go.
I asked the cheesemaker, I said, why are you making this cheese? And I was referring to this Parmigiano cheese. And he said to me, I'm making this cheese because my father made it before me and my grandfather made it before me. He said, I'm so proud of this cheese, I even sign it. And on each form, on each wheel of these cheeses, you'll see a little marking from each individual cheesemaker saying, I made this cheese, I'm proud of it, I created it.
I guess it's an element of pride. You should always sign the cheese.
My father signed every shirt because every shirt is different than the other shirts. Not the vestibility, the color, because it's the same, but the stitching is different.
My father signed everything, and he would date it and sign it, and things that he made for me would be on the bottom of the object or in an inconspicuous place. He would show that it was made by him, Michael Buccino, on such and such a date, and it would say Papa to Teresa, because that's how he felt I would remember him most.
Some of our greatest works of art were never signed, but we all knew who the artists were.
Every Italian mother who cooks is somewhat of an artist. You know, they make their sauce a special way. You know, they don't open the book and say, okay, a cup of sugar, you know, 2 cans of sauce, whatever. They do it by feel.
They were artistes. Now we have the cooking channel. What they need 300 pots to use, my mother did with 1 pot and a wooden spoon, and she hit me on the head with the wooden spoon while she was cooking.
I think it's part of our tradition in Italy, where with a great tomato you can make the most tasteful tomato sauce. When you have the right tomato from the south of Italy, with a lot of sun, with a lot of, when the ground is very, very full of taste, then that tomato is going to give you a lot of taste to you and to your pasta. So you don't need anything else, otherwise you are going to kill the wonderful taste of that tomato.
You go into the market and you see, you know, the different colors of vegetables, and you have to put certain colors together, and just seeing the really red peppers, you know, next to some yellow ones and some beautiful green ones, and then you have the, you know, the colors of the onions. And I put the, you know, the food out on the table, and I said, look at this, isn't this a beautiful still life? You know, but I don't even want to cook it. It looks so beautiful.
Oh, the cooking, forget about it. You know, it's. I remember going home for lunch all the time. You know, in high school and in grammar school, kids would sit around and they'd want to, you know, stay in school for lunch, you know, but I know that my mother was making chicken Vesuvio or something like that for lunch. I was going home.
Everything centered around food. You got sick at some point, food always cured it. If you broke your leg or something like that, you should eat. You know, no matter what, food was the cure-all to everything. And even before I would go out on a date and go out for dinner or something like that, my mother would say, have something to eat. I'm like, I'm going out to dinner. So it doesn't matter, eat something.
Last night I had 5 of my teammates over, and my mother made some monogots with the meatballs and the sausage and the sauce and some pork. You know, just a few other dishes, but that's pretty much night-to-night meal for us here. But the guys, you know, listening to them at the table eating, it's like, wow, we don't even eat like this in holidays. They just loved it. They were asking my mother if she could adopt them so they can keep coming back night after night.
To start off with, the prosciutto and buffalo mozzarella is very good. You're going to have some of that?
I don't know. Some of the tomato sauce, which is about half a cup. Bit of parsley. Done al dente. Once that's done, we drain it, and we will put it almost, we will
It's better than sacks.
Well, I tell you, the Italian appreciation of life is pasta. You got to have pasta.
My grandmother said, if the peasant had, they may not have had things and money, but they had flour and water. So guess what they made? Pasta. And they actually say spaghetti was created in Trabia. It dates back before the Chinese. They found evidence of some kind of spaghetti.
Basically, pasta was the thing that you ate every single night, but what made it different is how you made it. With peas, you could make it with beans, you could make it with clams, or pasta with mussels. That other ingredient is what made it a little different. If you said to your mother, We're having pasta again tonight. She said, well, this is not the pasta that we had last night.
You have about 50 different forms of pasta. Okay? Twists and curls and small ones and large ones and flat ones and thinner ones, and you go on and on and on and on and on with that. So sure, there's even creativity there. Why should they dull down their meals by seeing the same thing every time that they decide to eat pasta? No, they don't have to see the same thing. There's bucatini, perciatelli, ziti tagliati, penne rigate, I maccheroni.
I heard a guy say, look at that, let's try some of that manicotti for Managotti. Manicotti is not an Italian pasta. Manicotti was a shortstop played in the 53 Brooklyn Dodgers. Was terrible. I heard a guy say, look, they got a macaroni for the Three Stooges. Give me some of that. My mother was like a lot of Italian women of the 1950s and 60s. She could make a banquet out of $1.15, and things we ate, a lot of peasant dishes. Pane pomodoro. Mother would take a stale loaf of Italian bread for a dime, run it under the hot water, chop it up with onions and tomatoes and little pieces of celery, olive oil, and maybe a little thing of parsley, and we ate it in a big giant bowl, pane pomodoro. Now, you go to a high-class restaurant, they give you a little tiny piece of toasted bread with chopped up tomatoes, and they call it bruschetta. It's the same thing, but they charge you $7.95 for that bruschetta.
There were times when we had very little money. My mother would make dishes that you and I would never think of. I mean, she would take 2 or 3 day old bread, and she'd put it in a saucer, and then she'd buy a packet of lentils, and she would cook those, boil the lentils, and she'd take the juice and the lentils themselves and pour it over the bread. This is 2 or 3 old bread, maybe sometimes even longer. And we would have that, and we thought in those days that it was a delicacy.
Bread is the staple of an Italian meal, but a beautifully sculptured loaf is a work of art.
There were all kinds of breads. There were some breads that were stuffed with fennel. There were other breads that had some cheeses in them. But the best, as far as my family was concerned, was the hard-crusted bread, which you would slice rather thinly. And to this day, I have a very hard time resisting good bread.
A hot loaf of bread with the crust on it. I mean, they say, how can you compare it to that mushy American-style bread? There's no comparison at all. I mean, say, no.
My grandmother used to make bread twice a week. That never got hard. It was incredible. So, tell you, buy bread, leave it out for one day, the next day it's like a rock. I mean, if you ever hit anybody with it, you could kill them.
My favorite bread has always been semolina bread. The bread is a little yellowish in color with the sesame seeds on it, and it's a little bit softer, and it's delicious.
We take a lot of pride in this bread because being Sicilians, we grew up with this bread. I took my daughters about, at that time I was 2 years old. I took her to Italy, and we started from Milan, we went to Venice, Genova, all the way down to Palermo. And she will not eat the bread until we got to Palermo when she got to eat semolina bread. So I think it's in the blood.
When you create something that tastes delicious and you put your pride and joy into it, there's a certain satisfaction that you get out of it and a certain memory that it evokes, like music, really. You hear music and it evokes a memory. You eat certain foods, it evokes a memory. And so when I do that, I think of the old times, I think of the old neighborhood, I think of the fun we had, and all of that just brings it, life together for me.
Our culture nourished us in many different ways, but the love of music, was nurtured early in life.
I describe my mother as being lyrical. She was born and raised in Florence and then came to this country. So she had a very classical Tuscan upbringing, you know, with music and arts and things like that. And so there was always music playing in our house, and she sang.
Mother and her sisters and her mother would sing in harmony. And they said that they had learned this in Italy. They used to sing as they were washing clothes.
The music in my country and in my particular field, my father is a tenor, still singing now. So by imitation, I was almost forced to go there, in that direction.
We'd have a big dinner. When the dinner was over, my grandfather would have 4 or 5 glasses of wine, and he'd put his hand near his ear, and he'd start singing. And I used to tell him, Papa, you have no voice. And he used to get mad. He used to say, I'm a good singer.
We'd have this big table with all the food from soup to nuts on it, and we always had a mandolin player and a guitar player. And he would play, accompany us. My grandmother would sing, my uncle would sing, my mother sang, and I got up and sang. In fact, some of the songs that I did in those days, I eventually recorded for Columbia Records.
Most Italian homes were filled with wonderful songs brought here from the old country. But when we felt overwhelmed by our new surroundings, a family visit to the Italian theater offered us a touch of home.
One of the reasons for the success of the theater was because the Italians were able to come and hear their language spoken. And by their language, we mean their dialect, because there was no uniform Italian language at that point. So if they were Neapolitan or from any of the towns surrounding Naples, then the performances would be in Neapolitan. If they were from Sicily, of course, the dialect of Sicily would be used.
The Italian theater was very much alive in the 1920s. Unlike the Yiddish theater, which was pretty stationary, the Italian theater traveled around. They would be in Philadelphia one night and jump all the way up to Stamford, Connecticut.
Even before the turn of the century, there were Italian communities sprouting up all over the country. San Francisco was a big one, Chicago, of course. But then we've also got St. Louis, and we've got Denver, and we've got Upper New York State, and Barry, Vermont, Tampa, Florida. So the companies would find some marketing value in going to these outer reaches. We went out like men lost in a desert among these foreign places, and we'd come back poorer than when we left. But it was their way of trying to make a go of the theater and keeping the theater alive.
The typical Italian theater at the time consisted of 4 or 5 acts of singers, mostly doing Neapolitan songs, and then maybe a classical singer, a magic act, and then they would have a 3-act play.
My grandfather used to take me to all the Italian musicals and dramas, and in Hoboken there was a theater called the Jefferson Hall, and then there was another theater called the Rialto. They wouldn't start the show until he got there, really. He used to bring bouquets of flowers to the young singers, and he knew all the artists and all the songs.
If I had to pick one off the top of my head, Quarter Forestier. It's about an Italian from the United States who went back to Naples, and he realized that he was from Italy and all that, but now he doesn't recognize anything. And he starts to cry, and he says, "Oh, I'm no longer Italian. I can't understand." And the man, who was driving him around on the little horse and buggy like we have it, but he says, "No." He says, "You can still cry. You can cry. You're still Neapolitan."
Something was always pulling us back to Italy. The tug on our hearts was never greater than when we heard a Neapolitan song.
The Neapolitan folk song is the staple of Italian folk music, I think. The Neapolitans have a way of creating music that's very unique.
He's a very close.
When someone asks me to sing an Italian song, for instance, someone will say, "Sing Mama." I say, "Well, that's an Italian song." I don't sing Italian, I sing Neapolitan. I'm a Neapolitan at heart.
Però sta faccia d'angelo
One very special one to me is Passione. Te voglia, te pensa, te chiama, te vega, te sente, te sonna.
Songs like State vicino a me, Mamma, Sorrento, you know, there was a period in my life where I knew all those songs and sang all those songs, you know, just out of hearing them over and over and over again, even though I didn't know what the hell I was singing.
The reason I think they've survived, they use very simple premises. A broken heart, that's all. A song about a moon, the water, mare chiare, the water, a bay with a tree, two people who are in love.
Neapolitan songs have a beautiful melody about them, a melodic line that when you sing it to people, and with myself, I love to sing to young women, you know, so it's always, there's a romance about it. And when I was in Italy, I would sing to the young ladies, and their mothers would always fall in love with me because I'm singing these older classical songs like Non ti scordar di me, la vita mia legati a te.
Neapolitan music is, for the literature of the tenor, probably the most important thing that the Italian people has written. After very obviously talking about song. I think it's indispensable for the concert of a tenor to have some Neapolitan songs, and they are all beautiful. They always speak of love. Or sad or happy, they always speak of love.
Italian love songs were indeed eternal, even if love sometimes wasn't. But more and more in the United States, the language of love was coming to us in English.
The style of singing that we think of as crooning is a very modern idea because it has to do with the advent of the microphone. We had people like Russ Columbo, very important, who developed a style of singing that was intimate, that brought the people into a small room, no matter what size the room they were in. And then we saw it later with Mr. Sinatra, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Damone, Mr. Vail.
Italian people took such pride when there was someone who they could connect with that was recognized. I mean, we didn't just take it for granted, oh, you know, Frank Sinatra is just, you know, Frank Sinatra. Obviously, he was a phenomenal person unto himself, but the fact that he was Italian, you know, we were just so passionate about that. We just loved the idea that this Italian man could sing and sing so well.
One of the nicest people I've ever met in my life is Perry Como. You know, and people still to this day, after my being in show business 50 years, they still ask me about the story about Perry Como, if it was true, if I really did stop him in the elevator, and did I sing to him while I was an usher at the Paramount.
Poor old Perry Como must have been terrified, you know. Here's this guy supposed to give him a ride, and the guy stops the elevator and looks at him, and Perry Como doesn't know what's happening.
And I started singing to him, you know, there must be a way to help me forget that we're through. And I think I sang, there must be a way to stop me from thinking of you. And that's what he said, hey kid, you keep taking those singing lessons.
I'm the only Italian I know that can't sing. I can't. You know, if the truth be known, I would be a lounge singer somewhere. You know, I would be that guy that Dean Martin sort of created. I was always a Sinatra fan, but when I really started appreciating Dean Martin later on in life, I mean, to me, he was everything, you know. He was cool, he could sing, he could act, you know, he was just the coolest guy around.
Come bella c'è la luna, brilla strette, strette con le butto belle fasteggiare. Sotto il cielo di Roma, don't know what the country's coming to, but in Rome do as the Romans do. Will you, on an evening in Roma, sotto il cielo di Roma, on an evening in Roma?
My favorite singer is Tony Bennett because of the way he uses his voice to support a lyric and show us a melody line. As a young man, his voice was almost operatic, an operatic tenor, but never pushed toward that, used instead as a pop sound. And now, as he's grown older, his way with the lyric is, I think, unsurpassed.
I listened to records by people like Perry Como, Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett. Just so happens that they're all Italian, but it's not the reason that I just happen to like their voices. So that's how I learned most of my songs. But the Italian songs I learned at my grandmother's house.
Although the pop crooners were recording fewer songs with Italian lyrics, a few performers stayed with the old language, using it in a comic way, and we loved them for it.
Some singers were able to sing in Italian. Louis Prima did songs like Zuma Zuma Bacala, Felicia No Capisce, Marguerite, Wash Your Feet, really, Michael Guzzi.
I'd go down to the RKO in Boston to hear Louis Prima. I would love that. I mean, I'd take my lunch that my mother had made, skip school. And I did this 40 days straight. I would go to the RKO and listen to Louis Prima sing.
Louis Prima was exactly what you saw on stage. He was a great musician. He came out of New Orleans. And his brother Leon, who played trumpet with the band, you say, you know, my brother's crazy. I know.
I'm the Sheik of Araby. With no turban on. Your love belongs to me. With no turban on. Baby, at night when you're asleep. With no turban on. Into your tent I'll creep. With no turban on. And the stars that shine above. Jumping at the jaybird. We'll light our way to love. Jumping at the jaybird. And you'll rule this crazy life with me. Jumping at the jaybird. I'm the Sheiky man.
My father started playing guitar at about 14 years old. And he had the guitar and he would just work on some songs and sing some actually comedic songs, comedy stuff. And he went on to become a big singer. Got a break with RCA with a song called Darktown Schroeder's Ball, which he did half in English and half in Italian.
His audience of the 1950s were the sons and the daughters of the Italian immigrant population, who got a big kick out of hearing some little phrases, like when Peppino the Italian mouse asked him if he was Italian, he says, I'm Calabrese.
The other day I was driving around and I was going to get a paper, and I hear a ghetto blaster in the distance in a van. And all of a sudden I'm hearing da 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 da. It's Lazy Mary, and I'm going, jeez, it's a kid. They like this stuff. It's never gonna die.
Hey Marie, why you say no, no to me? Oh, how I missed you.
Like us, the music had been transformed in its passage from Italy, but we always knew the source. Whether comic or romantic, it had always been loved and respected as it was passed down from one generation to the next.
If you sing particular music for Italians, especially things like I Pariachi, Nessun Dorma, those songs, they touch on something that it has grown in the Italian culture, and it's something that gets passed down and passed down and passed down. Oh, my father used to play that song, or my grandfather used to play that song. You know, it has come down through, you know, hundreds of years of being sung for people or Italians appreciating that music.
Though our houses and our hearts were always filled with Italian songs, our greatest musical achievements were shared with the world.
Italian people, of course, grew up in the tradition of Verdi, Puccini, and when I made my debut, I felt it and I was nervous. I saw this big cast announcement, and I'm looking for my name, and there it was, Roberto Merrill. I said, perché Roberto, perché? Ma sua grande l'opera degli italiani, yes. And when I walked out, I said, now you're Italian. You're not Jewish, you're Italian.
Opera and the music really came out from the streets in Naples, in other places in Italy. And opera was always linked sometimes either to a love story, and Italians are the masters in love stories, or to a political event. So definitely those two things together made artists like Verdi or Puccini grow in the right and the perfect environment.
And the remarkable music those composers created resounded throughout the world, finding its way from the opera house to the living room.
On a Saturday afternoon, my grandmother would inevitably listen to the Metropolitan Opera, the Texaco broadcasts of Saturday afternoons. It was very important in our house. And it was tremendously important in so many of the houses of the Italians, because one thing they clung to was that love of beauty, in particular, I suppose, that love of opera, which is an absolute Italian invention.
We didn't have much money, but my father would always have enough money to buy records by Caruso or Gigli or Di Stefano, and he would play them, you know, on his day off. You know, he went Saturdays and Sundays. We'd always hear those wonderful singers.
My grandfather used to play all these Italian records when I was a kid. Caruso was a household name, you know.
Voice after voice after voice came from Italy. You had your great Ezio Pinza, of course, who was popularized as a result, not so much of the opera, but as a result of South Pacific.
My favorite was Ezio Pinza. I loved Ezio Pinza. I still love Ezio Pinza. He is, to me, he's a god.
Some enchanted evening, you may see a stranger, you may see a stranger across a crowded room.
Oh, it might have helped, but we knew you didn't have to be born in Italy to sing like an angel.
Rosa Ponzelle was not only great because she was an American, but she connected backwards to that whole tremendous cultural tradition for which the Italians were famous. She was taken to the Met, auditioned, and hired to sing in her first performance with Enrico Caruso, nonetheless, had never had any formal preparation for all practical purposes. She came from vaudeville, and she came prior to vaudeville from cabaret singing right here in the city of New Haven.
I'm a big fan of Pavarotti's, and I went over to the Met last night on the off chance that I would get a return ticket. I never had been before in my life, and I met a tenor friend, and he gave me a ticket to the opera, Tosca, and it was a wonderful show, but better still, when the show was over, I came out, and the security guard called me over, and he said, "Hey, I know you, you're the Irish tenor." He said, "A wonderful show, we really enjoyed that." He called his friend over, "Hey, Joe, this is the Irish tenor." He said, "Would you like to go backstage to meet Pavarotti?" So he brought me across the stage, down the side aisles, ahead of everyone that was queuing, and it was wonderful. I met the man himself, the maestro himself, and it was great. It was really good fun to meet this guy, because I have listened to his music from a very early age. I'm a big fan of the voice, and it was wonderful to meet the man in the flesh.
I admire what Luciano Pavarotti does in exposing opera to so many young people. I didn't like opera when I was a kid. I hated it. I thought it was boring. I didn't understand it, and I didn't understand the fuss over Giuseppe Verdi, as someone called him once, Joe Green. That's his name, Giuseppe Verdi. As I got older, I started to say, why is Rigoletto so big? Who is this Rossini? And who is Tosti? And L'Ultima Canzone by Tosti, the melody, I get choked up no matter how many times I play it. And then I start to say, hey, all of these people were here way before me. All of these millions of people who enjoyed this, there has to be something to this opera.
In my household, Giuseppe Verdi was called Joe Green. I love Verdi's music. My favorite is probably La Traviata, simply because the whole idea that this woman loved Violetta, loved her man so deeply, and it was doomed from the beginning.
I love that aria when the padre comes out and begs this girl. He says, "Come back to our province, leave this place. Di Provenza il mare. Di Provenza il mare il sol, chi dal corti cancellò, chi dal corti cancellò, di Provenza il mare il sol." My gosh, oh.
One of my favorite arias would possibly be the aria from Rigoletto, the Duke of Mantua, where he sings about women who are fickle. La donna è mobile, qual piuma al vento, muta d'accento e di pensiero. La donna è mobile, qual piuma al vento, muta d'accento e di pensier. Donna non vidi mai.
Puccini was a very sensual man. He was very dramatic. After he would write something, he'd get so carried away that he'd have to run outside and throw himself on the ground and hug Mother Earth because he was so, taken up by this music. And as you listen to it, it really does transform you.
I recently sang the tenor role in La Bohème, and my role was Rodolfo. And singing some of the most beautiful music ever written. Puccini is my favorite composer. He captured, the feelings of love and angst in this opera. Mimi, the soprano character, dies from consumption at the end, and every night I would be driven to tears. And I would, soak the poor girl who was playing Mimi, because I have to lie on her and just cry. And it wasn't something, as an actor, sometimes you have to have this method about your acting. You have to think about something that makes you sad. Well, the music is written in such a way that the emotion is written inside the music. It's woven in there. So if you're tapped into it, if you're sensitive to it, it's going to automatically move you.
The line about Puccini everybody knows, Vincerò, from the very famous aria from Turandot. And that is probably life, the real thing for life. Everybody would like to win in life, Vincerò.
The music of an eternal drama echoes throughout our lives, and with it, the passion, the mystery, the faith that binds us to God and to one another.
I was an altar boy, and in those days, the Mass was done in Latin, so you wouldn't make all the responses in Latin. But there came time, those chimes that they ring right around communion time. And the top half had no sounds at all. Crack, crack, crack. The bottom half, bing, bong, bing. So the first time I hit the chime, I didn't know I was supposed to hit the bottom end, and I hit the top end. Crack! I couldn't believe it. Crack! Crack! Everybody in the church turned to look at the altar boy. God, it was an experience I'll never forget.
I remember as a young altar boy, I used to serve at the masses that my grandmother would attend. And she would do the Mass, and then she would do the Rosary, and then she would go around the church and pray to all the saints.
The Italians have a lot of confidence in the saints, and they turn to the saints as their intermediary, as their person to go before God in presenting their petitions.
My mother, her saint was Saint Teresa. That was the one that she thought, that was a saint that would look after her. That's a saint that she prayed to. And in her bedroom, she always had a statue of Saint Teresa with all these fresh flowers around the statue and pictures of her. And whenever she would pray, I said, well, how do you know she, and I would kid her, I'd have some fun with her, and I'd say, yeah, but how do you know she's listening? How do you know Saint Teresa? She says, I can smell the flowers.
St. Anthony is known as the patron of lost things. If you lose something, you pray to St. Anthony, and he will find it for you.
One day, I lost my keys, and I could not find the keys to the rectory, to the church, and they were missing for days and days and days. And I searched, let me tell you, everywhere, trying to find the keys to the church, in and out, drawers, closets, pockets, everywhere. Finally, I went over into the church. I looked at St. Anthony right in the eye, and I said, St. Anthony, I need my keys. I can't go on like this. I can't tell you, within 15 or 20 minutes later, I opened a drawer, and there were my keys.
Once in my garden, I couldn't get rid of a rodent of some sort who was eating everything. Things would come and eat my basilico, which is basil. My parsley would be grown, and then I come and look, and it'd be flat. And somebody told me, St. Dominic, go out and get a statue of St. Dominic and put it in your garden. And I went nuts looking for a St. Dominic statue. Finally, I found one, and my garden never had another hole in it. I said, wow, it worked.
Perhaps our greatest displays of emotion are shown on those days when we honor the patron saint with our devotion, our sacrifice, and a feast.
Years ago in Chicago, they used to have the Italian feast in our old neighborhood, and children were selected to be angels. And they would put them on ropes, and they would glide across from one side of the street to the other, you know. And if you were an angel, I was never selected to be an angel, but if you were ever an angel, it was a big thing.
In Italian, we have an expression, quando è festa, è festa. When it's a feast, it's a feast, and there's nothing that should interrupt or disturb the celebration of a feast. Let everything else go by. You know, if there's problems, heartaches, headaches, forget about it for a couple of days, forget about it for a couple of weeks. It's time for a feast. Quando è festa, è festa.
We used to have a feast in Mount Vernon, on 10th Avenue in Mount Vernon. It was wonderful. I mean, I can still smell the sausage, peppers, and onions. Oh, God. You'd walk up and down the street, and you'd have little stands. They'd have the sausage, and then they'd have the cepolas. And I can still remember those days. I can still taste it. I can still smell it.
The feast of the Giglio, or San Paolino di Nola, is celebrated in Italy on his feast day. The tradition or the legend attached to San Paolino was that he ransomed his own self for the children of the town of Nola. When he came back on the boat from his captivity, the people of the town greeted him, and they came down the side of the mountain with lilies in their hand. Lily, the Italian word, is Giglio, and they look like one giant lily, and that's how that structure, that tower, is portrayed. To realize that that tower weighs 2 tons, to realize that 100, 110, 20 men get underneath that tower and lift it and do all sorts of steps and dances with that tower is very fascinating to experience.
But what I find most enjoyable is the children's Giglio. The young boys get together and carry their own version of a miniature Giglio. And they also do the commands. You hear the young boys saying these Italian dialect commands to the young carriers, and I don't even know if they understand what they're saying. All they know is that they're carrying on the tradition.
This one day, after the Giglio was finished being carried, all the men who participated and the people who belonged to the society would go to have a meal. And there were these wooden doors that were right between 2 tenements, and we were invited to go back there. And the door opened up, and suddenly it was like we were back in Italy.
Wherever we happen to be in the world, we always have a deep and abiding sense that a part of Italy remains within us forever.
I've been in the NFL playing for 13 years, and I see I go to a lot of different cities, and I see a lot of people, and everywhere I go, whatever team we play against, if the fans for that team are Italian, they'll let me know. They'll say, "Hey, Vinny, Paisan, I'm Italian," you know.
I was asked to sing at the Columbus Day Parade last year. I have never been asked to perform as an Italian American specifically. There's a huge amount of pride in in the Italian American community, and they wanted to show it off.
We have reason to be proud. We've been blessed with a very special gift. We can take the commonplace and make it beautiful. We can make a feast of any occasion. It is in our spirit. And, best of all, it's a gift we enjoy sharing with the world.
I could not imagine the world without Italians. I have never been prouder of being anything, and if I had to pick anything from scratch, I would certainly want to be an Italian. Thank God for Italians.
If you would like a VHS copy of this program, call 1-800-847-7793. Funding for this program is provided by Bertolli, bringing you olive oil since 1865. Born in Tuscany and used by generations. Bertolli. And by Sorrento Cheese Company. For over half a century, Sorrento Cheese Company has followed the secrets of its old world recipe to produce ricotta, mozzarella, provolone, and other traditional Italian cheese. Sorrento cheese, the authentic taste of Italian tradition.
I remember seeing an episode of Seinfeld, where, Kramer was saying, well, this is how they are in Italy. They sing to each other, right? And to some degree, that is true. We express ourselves with our hands and express yourself very, very passionately about the things that you believe in and about, whatever it is, going out or eating or whatever you're doing, you do it with a love and a joy. And that's why I say that, one of the things that they do in Italy is argument. Well, because you want to talk about it, and if you want to have something to say about your point of view, then you express it very passionately.
There's a lot of passion in culture that, without even realizing, I'm sure rubs off in one way or another, and depending on what your background is. The ethnic feeling of being an ethnic group, because you hear your grandparents and your mother or your father speaking the language all the time. When we were kids, I remember whenever they didn't want us to know what they were talking about, they would speak in Italian.
Well, the Italian language is very expressive, and it is the easiest language to sing in. Compared to German or English, they're kind of very harsh and guttural. The Italian language flows, it's very legato, and it's the easiest language I find to sing in. It's a beautiful language, and of course the Italian is very expressive and the music is very expressive.
I love the Barber Seville, and I sang many performances. I love the idea of the barber, with his Italian rep, and bravo Figaro, bravo bravissimo, bravo Figaro, bravo bravissimo, fortunatissimo, fortunatissimo, fortunatissimo per verità. I loved it. I became a ham actually on the stage, which was good.
I always sang as a kid, whether it was in the house and nobody knew about it or on the corner with the guys. And when I decided that I was going to pursue a singing career, my father was quite upset with me. I mean, he said, what kind of work is this? He says, a singer? What kind of work is it? What are you going to sing? Is he going to sing this stuff? If you want to be a singer, he says, you have to sing like Caruso, and you know, that's it. That's where he came from.
When I was a young boy, I used to shine shoes. And I used to go in 3 or 4 different saloons. Before you know it, I started singing in 1 or 2 of the saloons. And some of the customers used to go around with a hat. And I made $10, $8, $10, $12, $14. So they said to me, you must be a good, my grandfather said, you must be a good shoe shine boy. Because I used to give him $6, $7, and he said, you must make good money.
My father was a guitarist, not professionally. My father was an electrician, but he loved to play the guitar, and my father sang, and he had a beautiful voice. Not an operatic voice, but he had a beautiful, sweet voice. And his interpretation was beautiful when he would sing. It would always be from the heart. And my father would sing to my mother, you know. So I got the love of music from my parents. And then later, when I heard Sinatra, then it went to the next plateau. And that's when I started really thinking about maybe this is what I'd like to do, you know. And so then I tried it out on the girls in school. You know, I'd sing all these Sinatra songs to them, you know, and they kind of liked it, you know, and I said, hey, this is great, you know.
I remember one time I think I was in Buffalo, and I was doing my show, and I decided that I wasn't going to do too many Italian songs. I decided I would do 2 or 3 songs, you know, like Al di là, which I do in English and Italian, and one other song, a song called My Love Forgive Me, which is English and Italian. And I did the show, and I came off stage, and this fellow walked over to me, and he was from the neighborhood, you know, one of those rough and tough kind of guys, and he said, listen, I like you very much, he says, and I brought my girlfriend here. He said, but I don't think I'm ever going to come and see you again. I said, why? He says, well, you didn't do Innamorata, you didn't do Ti Gitan Gilla Voi, you didn't do Sorrento. He says, never again. I said, oh, no, please don't feel like that. I said, I promise you the next time I do it, you come and see me, I'll do all those songs for you. And it was okay.
My father was incredible in a sense that he was just afraid to show his pride in anything he did. He wouldn't give me the satisfaction. You know, I'd make a record, if it came out, he'd say, how come they're not playing the record? You know, I'd say, well, you know, the record company has to promote it. Well, what are you doing about it? I said, well, what am I doing? I said, what do you think? I called the radio station and told them not to play the record or what? And he bought every record I ever made. He went out and bought it, no matter how many I gave him. And I'd say, why are you buying these records? How many do you want? He said, if you did that with everybody, he said, you wouldn't sell any records. And nobody, you know, he had to be the guy who made a difference, and that's just the way he was.
I was a trumpet player, and for a while, until I found out I really didn't have that great talent. But we played Italian weddings, you know, and you had to learn certain things, like the tarantella. You had to learn certain waltzes, you know. Once you learn those things, then they loved you. You could do anything. And I took advantage of it because I was on the stage there, you know. And I would take a break from the music and do Shakespeare in Italian. You know, well, for example, essere o non essere, questo è il problema. Se sia meglio per l'anima soffrire o fragili fortune, sassi e dardi. I didn't say it was good Shakespeare, but it was...
Wasn't Shakespeare Italian? I mean, my father told me that. Everyone originated in Italy. We're just artistic. I think we love art and appreciate all kinds of art, from a sculpture to a glassmaker to a gardener.
sometimes, of course, sometimes I draw on my family for characterizations. I did a film called Unfaithfully Yours with Dudley Moore, in which I played an Italian valet. And that was my father. I mean, I don't know if anybody else saw it, but for me, that was him, to a T. The expressions, the attitude more than anything else. What I mean when I say I played my father in a movie, it's more like if someone makes a comment to me in that character, there's not an immediate verbal response. First there's there's a lot of just seemingly nothing happens, but a whole lot is going on,
I have a picture up there with Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra and me singing of Guys and Dolls, the crapshoot. What an experience rehearsing. Dean was walking around. When I walked in, he went, "Oh, there's an opera singer." He started to imitate. Then he'd walk around with the glass, with the little, on the rocks. And every time he'd walk around, finally, when I was free, I walked over to take a taste of this thing. And I took a sip and I lost my voice.
I think Dean Martin or was a fine actor. I think he gets overlooked a lot because of this persona that either he created or people created for him. I think he was a warm person. I mean, some people you look at and you think aren't approachable. I think he was. I think he was approachable. I had the opportunity to meet him several times and talk to him, and he was just as warm as he could be, and one of those persons that you like instantly, and that and it makes you all the more proud because he was Italian, and as I say, you could, he was somebody that could have been in your family.
Farfaril, his real name, Eduardo Migliaccio. He was a prince of a man, from what I hear. He died shortly before I was born. I never saw him work, yet I feel very much that I would have loved to seen him live. He was the king of Italian comedy. He was a master of changing costumes and have 3 layers of costumes and be able to change costumes instantly. He was loved by all classes of Italian, from the bankers to unemployed, whatever. They all found he was the king of Italian in this country.
About a year ago, I put out a CD on my dad, and I was at a party where Bruce Springsteen was at. So I got enough nerve to go up to him and say, "Bruce, I'd like you to have this CD." And he looked at it and stared down at it. "This was your pop?" And I walked away, and I thought to myself, if my dad was alive today, he'd probably be saying, "I told you I was a big star."
I admired Perry Como because he was a year or two before me, and he was on radio, and I just admired Perry. I got to know him later. One day he was singing a Jewish song on radio on his program. Ailey, Ailey, it's a famous Jewish song. I'm in my house, all of a sudden I get a call. "Bob, Perry." I said, "Yes." He says, "Would you sing that for me? I want to do it real Jewish style." We became very good friends. We started to play golf together. Wonderful guy.
Well, I think some of my heroes, mostly sports heroes, because obviously I was a sports fanatic when I was a kid. I always wanted to become a professional football player, and so guys like Joe DiMaggio, who my father watched for many years and kind of brought me up to follow Joe, and just the way he handled himself, not only on the field but off the field. And that's the important thing. Have respect for people. You can be a superstar, but yet be respectful to people and be raised with a certain amount of respect and decency for people in general.
I got to know Joe very well. It started in San Francisco when I was doing opera there, and he came to my performances. I invited him. And he never, I don't think he heard many operas and anything. So he came backstage one day after a performance of Aida or something. He says, hey, that's terrific. Wow, it sounded great. He says, but why don't you do it in English?
I come up with a good idea. When I make my game Trivial Prosciutto, I'm working on that. Trivial Prosciutto is going to be the biggest thing that ever hit this country, bigger than Monopoly, which there was an Italian family, Louis Monopoly and his wife Anna. That's another whole story. But Trivial Prosciutto is going to be it. What did Columbus have on the morning for breakfast that he discovered America? A frittata and a toast and black coffee, or I don't know, I wasn't there, I didn't see anything.
Italian style very much appeals to me because it's casual elegance, it's chic. You wear the clothes do not wear you. It's not dominant, it's less is more. You know, when you buy an Italian pant, it's just cut perfectly. It's not too baggy, it's chic. It's cut at the right moment that it reveals your ankle. It's the same, it's the perfection and the finesse of things, which I think makes Italian design so incredible.
Whenever I buy clothing for myself, I usually find what fits me best is made in Italy. And I can try on hundreds of jackets, and the ones that I look in the mirror and say, oh, that looks good. It's always made in Italy. I'm not trying to buy the Italian fashions, but it seems what fits my frame best and what feels the most comfortable on me is made in Italy. Italian shoes just feel so good. And, you know, I don't understand why that is. You know, even if you're not trying, if I'm not trying to buy Italian, I wind up buying Italian because that just works for me.
My mother was an incredible cook. I mean, incredible. And she did everything by feel, you know what I mean? And sometimes I'd ask her for a recipe, and I could swear after I'd made exactly what she told me, she left something out. And usually she would, you know what I mean? Just to let me know that she was the one if I wanted that particular dish.
I'll tell you one thing I did learn, which I love to do, I still do it to this day, is I love to cook. Love to cook. I mean, I love to come up with different recipes, and in fact, I have a recipe that I use for, in fact, I think I did it on the Regis and Kathy Lee and Regis show. It's you know, like a clam sauce. There's nothing like a wonderful clam sauce. Well, you know, when you use clam sauce, you usually use like basilico, which is basil, and you use some Italian parsley and so on. But I don't. I use cilantro. I cut up the tomatoes and I use oil, virgin oil, lots of garlic, and you cut up the tomatoes and you season it a little bit. You know, I use kosher salt, which is a wonderful salt to cook with, and cilantro. You chop up cilantro, put it in, and let it cook together, and then you put your clams in it, your clam juice and clams. And when you make your pasta, then when it's almost finished, you take it and put it right in and let it all cook together. But as I tell it to you, my mouth is watering because I know how good it is.
My grandfather used to love to cook. He used to do a lot of cooking. And he used to make bread and cook and make roasts and gravy and pasta and everything. Especially in the winter days when it snowed, he and I would sit down and play cards and he would cook. And then I'd fall asleep. He'd say, but when you're outside, you don't get tired with the friends you hang out with me, you get tired. I said, Baba, I'm getting tired.
I think Neapolitan cooking was probably the best of any. My mother would make eggplant, for instance. And it took me, I never liked the way eggplant looked when I was a kid. You know, so up until I was about 12 years old, I wouldn't even go near it, okay? But nowadays you go to a restaurant or a luncheonette that's an Italian And they'll give you an eggplant sandwich, and they put mozzarella on it and everything else. My mother made it without mozzarella. And you must eat eggplant without mozzarella and just Parmesan cheese on it with sauce on it. Now, I make that, and I'm just telling you right now, it's just, the taste of eggplant is so incredibly unique. It is completely different from any other kind of food that I could think of. And I could eat eggplant every day in one form or another.
My vacation nowadays, I have to bring my kids all the way to Florida and spend $4,800. My vacation was sitting under the peach tree with my grandmother. Facciamo così, go nice, don't move, stay nice and quiet. And then she'd give me a peach, and I'd eat the peach and then suck on the pit for 5 hours till the pit cracked in half and there was something to eat inside the pit.
I've had patron saints that have been handed down. Like, anytime I lose something, I pray to St. Anthony. And I know this may sound really off the wall, but I usually let's say I misplace it, you know what I mean? I can't find it, I know it's in the house. After I pray to St. Anthony, I usually find it right away. St. Jude is my, you know, whatever something is impossible. When I was a kid and I was struggling and trying to make it, and I'd ask St. Jude for strength and help and guidance.
Well, my grandfather come from Nola, N-O-L-A, Nola. And they had a feast called Ogilie Nola, Aveste Zambolin, St. Paul. And we would go all the time. It would be on 109th Street in New York, and then it was up in Cliffside for a long time. And that was a great feast. They used to have a grand marshal, and they used to carry a saint. They used to put the band up on a saint, and then the grand marshal would give the orders when to drop it. And you better be alert, you know, you'll have a building fall on you. But it was a great saint. It was a great feast.
I think more and more, the more the Italian story gets communicated to the American people, the more envious the American people are of the Italian culture. Because it is a beautiful story, the story of the Italian American. Our sense of history, our sense of culture, our sense of art is really something to be very proud of.
Well, I think they enjoy living because I think they helped create it, you know, way back when, and I think we're still living under some of the rules that the Romans made, and you know, as far as government and everything is concerned. And with a culture like ours, who couldn't love the art of living? You know, I mean, we've done everything. I saw a T-shirt one time, and I bought it. It said America. We found it, we named it, and we built it. You know, and I go along with that. I think it's the greatest culture that this world has ever seen. I guess everybody feels that way, but I happen to believe that it is.
I feel very lucky and fortunate to be an Italian American. Some of the best people in the world, or some of the best artists have been Italian. The best sculptors have been Italian. You have Frank Sinatra you'll never see another one like Frank Sinatra, an Italian. Joe DiMaggio, an Italian. We can go back to Michelangelo, and you know. So I feel very fortunate to be an Italian. I have great respect for every ethnic person or group. I have great respect for them. I respect the Jewish people for their beliefs and their talents, the French, whatever. But I feel that I'm very fortunate to be an Italian because the Italians have love in their hearts. They love the best foods, and they're some of the finest people I've ever met in my life, are the Italian Americans.
Bertoli is rich in history, and we were very fortunate recently to come across some great commercials that were broadcast in Italy in the 1950s. If you were born in Italy, you may remember this historic moment, so please enjoy them with us.
Bertolli presenta Olivella e le città d'Italia. Non sappiamo perché.
Tutto vada bene ogni volta solo a te.
La sposina un po' pranzetto preparando sta, ed insieme al maritino se lo gusterà. L'altro insiste ma fallisce, chissà mai perché.
Tutto vada bene ogni volta solo a te. Oh 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 oh, io davvero lo so. Un consiglio ti do. Tutto bene ti andrà. Se userai Bertolli, che vuol dire qualità.
Bertolli? Se vuoi saper con quale condimento puoi fare un piatto buono e saporito. Bertolli? È l'olio di completo gradimento. Quest'olio sarà il vostro preferito. Bertolli?
Ed insieme al famoso olio d'oliva, un vino d'eccezione, schietto e sincero. Chianti classico Bertolli.
Olivella super snella, oggi al mare va. Lo sci d'acqua col marito si prepara a far. Piroetta, salta e vola con facilità. È una campionessa di eleganza e agilità. Tutto bene le va, super bella. Tutto bene le va, super bella. Tutto bene le va, come bella. Maria Rosa, invidiosa, verso il mare va. E con grazia di balena la vuol imitar. Tratti, sfighi e mosse false, 100 bagni fa. Stiamo un po' a vedere cosa le succederà. Tutto male le va, sopranare. Tutto male le va, sopranare. Tutto male le va, sopranare. Aragosta e maionese, ecco pronta già. La famiglia radunata se la gusterà. L'altra insiste ma fallisce.
Mi domando che cosa devo fare per assomigliare a te. Usa anche tu l'olio di oliva Bertolli, l'olio giusto.
Che fai? Mangi l'insalata senza olio?
Se uso un olio troppo saporito, non riesco a digerirlo. Se è troppo leggero, non sa di niente.
Pensi davvero che non ci sia un olio giusto?
Bertolli. Giusto sapore, giusta leggerezza. Olio d'oliva Bertolli. La sapienza dell'olio.
In roulotte scintillante la sposina va. Su per monti e verdi prati, che felicità. Cieli azzurri e stelle alpine stanno ad ammirare la disinvoltura di Olivella nel guidar. Tutto bene le va, super bella. Tutto bene le va, super bella. Ed un bacio le dà, come bella. Maria Rosa, invidiosa, verso i monti va. E il marito, come sempre, sonnecchiando sta. Ma la stella è troppo bella per lasciarla là. e da questo istante nascono le difficoltà. Tutto male le va
In montagna,
tutto male le va
in montagna,
e finisce così.
in montagna.
Due bistecche sulla brace stanno a rosolare. In un attimo son cotte pronte da gustare. L'altra insiste ma fallisce.
Mi domando che cosa devo fare per assomigliare a te. Usa anche tu l'olio di oliva Bertolli, l'olio giusto.
Che fai? Mangi l'insalata senza olio?
Se uso un olio troppo saporito, non riesco a digerirlo. Se è troppo leggero, non sa di niente.
Pensi davvero che non ci sia un olio giusto?
Bertolli. Giusto sapore, giusta leggerezza. Olio d'oliva Bertolli. La sapienza dell'olio.
Buongiorno, signora Teresa. Ha visto? Mi sono comprato un pizzoncino novello da fare ai ferri. Come dice? Sei novello? Boh, me lo hanno assicurato. Ah, guardare le zampe? Ah, si capisce da quello? Vediamo subito. Signora, questo qui c'è un anello. Boh, si vede che è sposato. Ah, c'è anche un fogliettino. Sarà la garanzia della giovane età del piccione. Vediamo un po', mi faccia leggere, eh. Domani sbarcheremo a Marsala, Garibaldi. Ho l'impressione che questo piccione, signora, sia un po' troppo stagionato. Allora non è buono. Come dice? Ah, può diventare squisito lo stesso se cucinato bene? E con che cosa lo devo cucinare? Ah, con olio. Olio d'oliva, genuino. Ah, sì. No, no, quello lì. No, vale meno che l'altro, signora. Ecco, quello. Il Bertolli. Ma si capisce perché c'è olio e olio, ma di Bertolli ce n'è uno solo. E sa con che cosa lo annaffio, signora? Con un buon bicchiere di Chianti Bertolli. Perché c'è vino e vino, ma il Chianti Bertolli è uno solo.
Olio d'oliva Bertolli, la marca centenaria famosa in tutto il mondo. Olio Bertolli, un nome e garanzia di un prodotto veramente superiore. Bertolli, una grande marca, 2 prodotti di gran pregio esportati in tutto il mondo. Bertolli.